What's going on, everybody? C4 here today, continuing with my 7-round mock draft series, the best mock drafts you're going to find anywhere on YouTube. Believe that shit. Today, we're doing the Buffalo Bills. We will be grading the free agency period, talking about the 2016 draft to get a feel for what we should do in the 2017 draft. Now, they don't have a whole lot of picks. I see only 6 picks on the board, so we need to make the most out of that for a team that, you know, it's really tough. I would say for the most part, if I was just looking at this roster, I would say it's a team that's trying to win now, but with a lot of changes. You know, they brought in my boy, Sean McDermott, a disciple of Jim Johnson, formerly of Philadelphia. They got Leslie Frazier, DC. Well, I don't know if he was there last year or not, but a big overhaul since they got Rex Ryan's fat ass out of town. I think Buffalo, you know, you look, like I said, a lot of the guys, they're ready to win now, but when you have transition like that in the coaching staff, it's tough to win right away. So I think the more so they should be looking at finding stability this year while being able to compete, and then hopefully, you know, they may have a chance of making the playoffs. But again, with the New England Patriots in your division, it's always going to be tough to just battle out for a wild card spot. But let's see what the Bills can do. So they're 7-9 last year, 16th ranked offense, 19th ranked defense. The MVP for my money was LeSean McCoy. Big time year for him, even though he wasn't healthy the entire season. When he was healthy, he was pretty much playing like a top 5 running back for most of the season. And as much as, you know, a little bit salty still, you know, time has not healed that wound of LeSean McCoy trading. But, you know, it's nice to see him while doing in Buffalo. I have no ill will against Buffalo. Anyone in that division that can kind of knock off and compete with the New England Patriots are good in my books. So the needs for the Buffalo Bills before free agency started, I had wide receiver, right tackle, defensive back, and offensive guard. Now we do have to mention the losses before we mention who they added. And the biggest loss is Stephon Gilmore. They lost their top corner. I think Ronald Darby is fairly solid. I'm actually thinking that he's consistent and is, you know, a guy that could potentially, with, you know, not going to say he is right now, but I can see Ronald Darby being a corner one in this league. Not an elite corner, not a shutdown corner, but a corner one, which, you know, as an Eagle fan, Jesus Christ, I'd do some pretty nasty shit to try to get a corner one on our team. So now they lost him to the New England Patriots. That's a double whammy, though. He went within the division. So now the Patriots have him. Just the strong getting stronger. They lost Robert Woods as well at the wide receiver spot. But they did hold on to Tyrod. There was questions over that. They cut Nickel Roby-Coleman, which freed $1.6 million. I give him a D. I thought he was a very solid nickel corner. I don't really know why they got rid of him, to be completely honest with you. They got Dan Carpenter, which freed up $2.5 million. Give him that a B+. He wasn't that great. They signed Patrick DeMarco, 4 years, $8.5 million. That's a B+. That might even be an A+, considering what Kyle Juszczyk got. And Patrick DeMarco is potentially a top 5 fullback in the NFL. It is a dying position, but they certainly utilized the fullback spot there in Buffalo. And if I'm a LeSean McCoy, Mike Gillespie level in fantasy football, you know, those guys could be on my draft radar now that they have a phenomenal blocking fullback and an upgrade over Jerome Felton. They signed Mike Tolbert to a 1-year, $1 million deal. Give him that a D. Why would you sign 2 fullbacks? They got Steven Hauschka, the kicker from the Seattle Seahawks, 4 years, $12 million. Give him that a B. Hauschka's one of the best kickers in the NFL, and that's an immediate upgrade over Dan Carpenter. Restructured Tyrod Taylor to essentially a 2-year, $30.5 million deal. Give him that a C+. You don't want to have Cardale Jones as the number 1 quarterback on your depth chart for Sean McDermott with a new head coach. You don't want that. So bringing Tyrod Taylor back, he is a game manager. He's pretty much, you know, the chocolate Alex Smith, if you want to go that far. And you really tag him as that. But he's never going to be, you know, obviously different quarterback. Tyrod has the big arm. But, you know what I'm saying. Similar stat line, similar production that you'll get out of an Alex Smith. But you can win with that. The Bills can win with that as long as they can. I'm still really surprised they didn't bring back Zach Brown. I'm not 100% sure what their cap situation is, but Zach Brown was phenomenal for them. And I wouldn't see a guy, you know, a defensive-minded coach like Sean McDermott not wanting to bring that back, especially with, you know, who else do you have back there? Unless they fully believe that Reggie Ragland can come in and step in with Preston Brown as their starting linebackers, which they very well could. I'm a big fan of Reggie Ragland, which we'll talk about in the 2016 draft. We have to wait and see. They signed Micah Hyde to a 5-year, $30 million deal. I'm only giving that a C. I think they overpaid for a guy that was on a terrible secondary last year in Green Bay. He is kind of a Swiss Army knife whose versatility is valuable and special team ability. But $30 million for that is too much for my money. They released Corey Graham, which freed up $4 million. Give him a C. Not really much cover there. They brought in Jordan Poyer. I guess so. They re-signed Lorenzo Alexander, 2-year, $9 million. I'm giving that a B+. They signed Philly Brown from the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to give that a C+. They signed Ryan Groy, 2-year, $5 million. Giving that a C. Great depth at the center. And they signed Andre Holmes from the Oakland Raiders, 3 years, $6.5 million. A C. I think, you know, Andre Holmes and Philly Brown both. I would much prefer Robert Woods, but in terms of what they paid for him, not terrible. And it's pretty much just compliments for Sammy Watkins. Anyways. So then now taking a look at the 2016 draft. I'm going to go really quickly here. First round, I was a big fan of their first 2 picks and didn't like the rest of their draft. I really like Shaq Lawson. beast Clemson player. I thought he was almost as good as Vic Beasley. Now we saw what Vic Beasley did last year with the Falcons, so I hope he gets some protection. I think he got hurt. I don't think he had very much of playing time last year. And then you had Reggie Ragland in the second round, who a lot of people, and myself included, consider the top inside linebacker in last year's draft class. I think he tore an ACL or something like that. But when he comes back, he's going to be a big-time playmaker. And maybe that is why they decided not to bring back Zach Brown. The third round, they got Adolphus Washington. Not a huge fan, personally. I don't necessarily know what his stat line was last year. I think he got a couple sacks. So he was productive. Definitely a big-time playmaker while he was at Ohio State. And maybe he can carve out a bigger role here next year. They got Cardale Jones in the fourth round. Was never a big fan of Cardale Jones. Presented value. I guess there's upside there, but I don't really think he'll develop into much more than a backup. Then their last 3 picks in the draft were Williams, Cody Listenby, the burner from TCU, and Kevon Seymour from USC. So I wasn't a huge fan of the back end of the draft there, but Reggie Ragland and Shaq Lawson were 2 beasts, and Washington was somewhat productive as a rookie. So not a bad draft, not a great draft, just a solid draft. That's what you want. As long as it's not a bad draft, I think you'll be all right when things come on the other end. So now it's time to look at a 7-round mock for the Buffalo Bills, and let's jump right into things. So in the first round with pick number 10, I have them going with a popular pick for them right now, but it makes a lot of sense, and that is, to partner up with Sammy Watkins. Another Clemson product, Mike Williams from Clemson, 6'4", 220 pounds, put up 15 reps on the bench press at the combine, ran a 4.55 at his pro day, which is pretty much what he expected, but this is a compliment league. I think personally, if I'm looking for a wide receiver, in my mind, I would go for a John Ross. But John Ross is not as good of a compliment to Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins, no doubt about it, is the franchise receiver there in Buffalo. So now, what guy that doesn't offer the same things that Sammy Watkins does? What can you really add in? Watkins is more of a burner. You get a guy like Mike Williams as your big-time possession guy. Pair that with Corey Brown, who's a speedy, intermediate between that, and you got yourself a well-rounded wide receiver core, and you may be even looking better without Robert Woods on the roster if that is the direction that you go. I think wide receiver, you got to get Tyrod Taylor some weapons. They made that extension for 2 more years with him being the guy. So you have Sammy Watkins can get the deep ball. You have Corey Brown, Philly Brown, that can get the deep ball. Have some guy with a set of hands that can help Tyrod move the chains with Charles Clay. And I think that is going to be Mike Williams. I think he's a perfect fit for this team that needs to find more playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Now, jumping into the second round, big-time pick here. Fills a need, fills a void. And that is going to be Adoree Jackson, the corner from USC, 5'10", 185 pounds, 4'4", 240, 36-inch vertical. Pro comparison on NFL Network, Jonathan Joseph. I think with the loss of Mr. Stephon Gilmore, you got to reload the corner spot. Right now, you're starting outside corner with Ronald Darby is Kevon Seymour. A guy like Adoree Jackson, I don't necessarily know this is going to be the best fit because you get a guy like that, you may want to rush him to the starting lineup, and I personally don't believe that Adoree Jackson should be a day 1 starter. But you look at his production at USC, the tape doesn't lie. It was incredible. And I'll be the first one to admit that I'm not 100% sold on him. I think it's still, to this day, after everything that's happened, all the combine, he's the biggest boomer bust prospect of this year's draft class. Either he's not going to be big enough, and he's going to be too much. I relied on my athleticism in college, or he's going to be a bona fide great corner. I'm not going to say he's going to be a franchise corner, but he's going to be, if things work out for him, his ceiling's either going to be out of the league in 4 years, or he's going to be one of the top fast outside corners in the NFL today. And I think with his lack of size, that's a little bit worrisome, but he certainly makes up for that more than he does with his athleticism. Slot corner, perfect fit for just a team that needs to reload there in the secondary with Ronald Darby. I mean, like I said, this was how many years ago? 2-3 years ago, this was one of the top secondaries in the NFL. Ronald Darby. Well, I was like only a year ago, Ronald Darby. But you had Ronald Darby. You had Corey Graham. You had Jarris Byrd. All these guys. They're not all the same years, but they've always had incredibly strong playmakers back there in the secondary. And they need to reload there, and that is Adoree Jackson to a T. Now, jumping to the third round, we go again for another defensive playmaker. And I think he may probably go in the middle of the back end of the second round, but how my mock draft played out when I was looking at the board, he was still available there, and he might be in the third round because some teams may be, kind of like Adoree Jackson, a little bit worried about his size. I've been going with pick 75, third round, Budda Baker, the free safety / nickel corner from Washington. Now, I more so have this if he does decide to play safety, and I think a guy like Sean McDermott could find a way to utilize him a little bit. I trust me, Sean McDermott, I know that defense in Carolina was a lot Ron Rivera's, but he took a guy. His name was, can't remember his name at the top of my head, Kurt Coleman, who was terrible. He was a phenomenal special teamer, always worked hard, could not do cover for shit with the Philadelphia Eagles. Went to Carolina, had like 8 picks. He's now an interception specialist at the safety spot. So I think a guy like Budda Baker, a lot of people saying he may be a nickel corner, and that very well may be his end spot, which would make this pick a little bit redundant because I think him and Adoree Jackson would kind of overlap there. But if you see him as a free safety, which they very well could, Jordan Poyer's starting free safety right now. That's not good enough. Even though they brought him in from Cleveland, I'm an Eagle fan. Jordan Poyer's not good enough. He's a converted corner that played a little bit of safety. You need to continue to improve there. And Budda Baker could be the next ball hawk. Could be reminiscent of what Jarris Byrd brought to that defense only a couple years ago before he took the big money and kind of busted in New Orleans. I think Budda Baker and Adoree Jackson, 2 impact playmakers that immediately restore Buffalo to have the potential of having another top flight defensive back. When you go against Tom Brady twice a year, and that's the team you need to contend with, when you go against a team like the Miami Dolphins that have one hell of a stable of wide receivers, you better be damn bringing a great defensive secondary. And I think adding Budda Baker and Adoree Jackson the 2nd and 3rd rounds would certainly go a long way to helping them solidify that. So then the 5th round pick, 156, they have 2 5th-round picks. They got to go offensive line. I think secondary and offensive line, after they add Mike Williams in the 1st round, is the 2 biggest areas they should look at. Obviously, when now you're in the 5th round, you're not going to get much more than prospects and depth, but that's kind of what they need. So with 156, after going after Jaylen Ware, right tackle from Alabama State, just a big monster. In terms of length, 6'8", 295 pounds. He will be a right tackle. And that was one of my needs. I think they should try to find some competition for Jordan Mills and Central Henderson. I know there's some off the field, not solid. He's not. You can't guarantee on Central Henderson, who I was actually fairly high on at the University of Miami when he came out in 2014. But I think you still want to find some competition there for the right tackle spot. I think a guy like Jaylen Ware. It kind of sucks to think that a guy that you take in the 5th round may best end up on practice squad and then get him bulked up, get him prepared, get him coached up, and then look for him in 2018. But that may be the case here with Ware, but he definitely has a lot of upside here in the 5th round, which is what you kind of need to go for. And he's a big, bulky right tackle that could certainly add some depth and compete for the top depth role with Central Henderson, because there is some uncertainties. Didn't he go missing or something like that, Bills fans? Did something weird happen like that with Central Henderson? They haven't heard from him. What the hell? You're a goddamn professional athlete. What the hell? Don't you have an agent? Come on, bruh. So, that is it. And then in the 2nd, 5th round, pick 171, I'm going after a uber athletic linebacker. Even though he didn't really test that well, he's in the Miles Jack build. And that is Jaylen Brown, the linebacker from UCLA. 6 feet tall, 130 pounds, 4.7 40, 17 reps on the bench press. A little bit disappointing that he ran the 4.7. I thought he was going to be one of the quicker linebackers, but he's more so there for coverage ability. I'm a fan of Reggie Ragland. I like Preston Brown, but you're one of those guys, you're not going to rely on them being able to drop back into coverage more often than not. That's kind of what you have with a Zach Brown type of very big, speedy linebacker. So I think you can get that an athletic guy with Jaylen Brown. Great cover talent. More so, it's going to, he's undersized, so it's going to be tough for him to be the big blocker. But that's what you need. You need a contrast there in the linebacking core, because right now you got your 2 thumpers. You get Reggie Ragland and Preston Brown, your thumpers. So now you need a guy that can come in when you run some nickel, when you run some dime. And I think, that is what you're going to need to have. Is a cover linebacker in your stable of linebackers. And I don't think they have that necessarily right now. And a guy like Jaylen Brown certainly can come in anytime you get a linebacker like this, special teamer right away. But I think he can come in as a complement to that linebacking stable that they have there now. And then finally in the 6th round pick, 195, continuing to add depth on the offensive line. I them selecting Cameron Lee, the offensive guard from Illinois State. 5'4", 40, 18 reps on the bench press. The only thing that kind of sucks when he's not bendy, which is what you get when you got that's 6'5", 315 pounds, 34-inch arms, so he's lengthy. He has a lot of upside. Again, another guy probably destined to be a practice squad right away. The physical traits is pretty much all he has. He's strong. That's what you got with him. But I think for looking for backup and depth role at the guard spot, more so, you got Eric Wood, who's You got Richie Incognito, who's getting up there in age. So the more interior offensive linemen that you can add that are young and you can develop, I think the better. And Cameron Lee was a top guard left on my board at this spot, so he could fill in a need, which is depth in the interior for the Buffalo Bills. There you go, guys. That is my 7-round mock draft and free agency grades for the Buffalo Bills. As always, if you're a diehard Bills fan, I know we got a couple on the channel. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. If this is your first time stopping by, Bills fans, Bills Army, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button if you enjoy. We're looking for 150 likes, 100 likes, 150 likes, either or. And tomorrow, the Saints 7-round mock draft will be released. So thank you guys for watching, and until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.